What is going on, everyone? John Kelly here with FightNumbers.com, here to break down UFC Brasilia and coming off UFC 248. It was a fun card. We did have some good fights. We had some duds as well. Obviously, the main event did not live up to the hype. Adesanya Romero was not a very fun fight. Kind of just a weird fight, but the Joanna Zhang Weili fight certainly made up for it, in my opinion. That was one of the best fights I've ever seen live. Ton of fun. So overall, I think the card was still pretty good. But yeah, looking forward to UFC Brasilia. This one is definitely a different card. Whereas last week we saw so many people 9K and above with a good chance at getting a finish. This week is kind of the opposite. A lot of the 9K and above fighters are likely to go to decision or win a decision and not score very well. So this one's going to be interesting. Roster construction is going to be different for sure. The mid range is definitely more loaded with the possible finishes, and there won't be overall as many finishes on this card. So it's just something we got to think about when making lineups this week. But still excited about it. Got a few people I really like on this card. Overall, for a free ESPN fight night, this is a very strong card compared to some of the other cards that we've seen that haven't been very strong. So this is going to be a good one. We'll get right into it. So if you've never joined us before, I'm John Kelly. FightNumbers.com is my website. Basically, I break down every fight matchup on every UFC card, completely free. Talk about how I see the fight playing out, how we can target different scenarios on Draftkings based on that analysis. I talk about the value that I'm seeing in the betting markets as well. And then up on my website, I'll have Draftkings player rankings broken down by tiers. I'll have ownership projections that are usually updated on Friday or Saturday, and then a line movement page that's updated midday Saturday. And that is all free at fightnumbers.com. So go ahead and check that out. If you have any questions as we're going through, go ahead and interrupt me in the chat at any time. And then at the end, basically, I'll recap basically all the strong plays that I like, my core, I guess, and then some of my favorite bets on the card as well. But all right, let's get right into it. The first fight up on the card is going to be Veronica Macedo versus Bea Malecki. And let me go ahead and get the best fight odds pulled up here. Oh, that's DraftKings. All right, best fight odds. Veronica Macedo, currently a -170 favorite. The comeback on Malecki is +150. This fight, not to go to decision, has actually moved a little bit. It's now -120 to end inside the distance. The inside distance line for both fighters, Malecki +325, trending in the right direction. And then I'm assuming Macedo's is trending in the right direction as well. Pretty steady. Open at +178, now +185. Yeah, I'm on Veronica Macedo here. I'm pretty big on Macedo as well, which might be a hot take just because, she's not a super trustworthy fighter. She was 0-3 in the UFC prior to getting that armbar victory against Poliana Viana in the first round. But this one's an interesting matchup. On one hand, we have Bea Malecki, who only has 3 professional fights, so she's super green. She's coming off her UFC debut victory in the second round by rear naked choke against Duda Santana. And then obviously Macedo, like I said, she doesn't have the strong UFC record, but she's fought some legitimate talent. She fought Andrea Lee, she fought Jillian Robertson, and then I mentioned the victory against Poliana Viana. After being on Bea Malecki as an underdog in her debut, where she did come through for us, she scored well on DraftKings and came through as a small underdog on that Sweden card. I was pretty big on her there, but a lot of the reasons I was on her, it's not the same here. So basically, anytime an underdog comes through for you, you always want to find a way to believe in them again. So coming into this matchup, I was like, oh, Bea Malecki, she came through for us. And I kind of forgot the way that she came through for us, and it wasn't pretty. Basically, she was fighting Duda Santana, who also was just as inexperienced as her, only had like 3 or 4 professional fights, just very, very low level. She was fighting in her home country of Sweden, so basically everything was stacked in her favor, and she looked terrible. She was getting dominated on the feet. Santana was piecing her up. Santana took her down a couple times, pretty much at will. Santana got to mount. Santana advanced position. She did not look good. Completely dominated in the first round. Got dominated in the first round, and then in the second round, it was pretty much going the same way until Santana was fighting for a takedown, and they kind of just fell over, and Malecki just fell into mount. And from there, she got a little comfortable, took the back, and ended up choking her out. So, I mean, that's the one thing she does have going for her is she does have a decent rear naked choke. She has a very strong choke. She's a tall girl, 5'11", pretty strong. But that's really it. On the feet, she's very stationary. She doesn't move her head like at all. Very hittable target, and that's going to be a problem against Veronica Macedo. Veronica Macedo is not a bad striker, and she's just much, much better than Malecki on the feet. And then when it comes to the grappling, which is supposed to be Malecki's advantage, Veronica Macedo is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so that advantage is gone. Basically, the only Oh, one other thing I want to say about Malecki before is that none of her three fights have reached the third round. And against Duda Santana, her cardio was looking pretty questionable after the first round. She was more tired than a normal UFC fighter should be after one round, in my opinion. And I think she's lucky to have gotten that finish because I think we would have seen her really gas out if it reached the third round. So that's another little narrative as well, is that she just has we haven't seen her go 15 minutes, and I have questions that she's able to do that. So it's just another reason why I favor Veronica Macedo. But the only advantage that Malecki does have going for her is her height. She's going to be 8 inches taller than Macedo. She's 5'11". Macedo is like 5'3". So that's a huge size discrepancy. But I don't think that Malecki really knows how to use that discrepancy, and she's not very good at range. So I really just don't see Macedo having any problem with her. And then if it does go to the mat, Macedo's excellent at reversing position. She uses that cage really well to bridge, kick off the cage, and create scrambles. So if Malecki does get any takedowns, then I expect Macedo to actually be the one advancing and getting into a favorable position. And overall, she's just a much more well-rounded fighter, and I think that clearly shows in this matchup. And Macedo by submission is my official pick in that one. So I mentioned how the 9K range and above doesn't have a lot of chances for a finish. This one, I think, does. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure Twitch is working. Yeah. All right, next fight up on the card is going to be Bruno Silva versus David Dvorak. If anyone could let me know if Twitch is working, I just want to make sure I'm getting an error on my side. Any viewers in the chat, let me know if Twitch is working. I'm gonna keep proceeding like it is. I think it is now. Sorry about that, technical difficulties. So yeah, so next fight up, Bruno Silva, David Dvorak. And this one, it's going to be my first dog play. David Dvorak plus 100 underdog. Bruno Silva, the slight favorite at minus 120. Bruno Silva, he's just not that good in my opinion. I don't have a lot of trust in him. I know he's Henry Cejudo's protege. He does have some decent wrestling skills. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm not a big believer in his talent overall, just as a fighter. Didn't look great in his debut against Khalid Taha before he got submitted in the third round. So I don't know. I kind of don't know what to think about Bruno Silva, but overall, I'm just not that impressed with him. And on the flip side, the underdog David Dvorak, he's on a 13 fight win streak, and none of those fights have reached the third round. So this guy's a finisher, and 6 of his last 9 wins have come by knockout. And we saw Taha repeatedly hit Bruno Silva, especially with like a right cross. It seemed like he hit him 3 or 4 like just pure strikes. So I think that could be An interesting way this one plays out is if Dvorak, who does have that knockout power, is able to hit Silva as much as Taha did, then I think he could sit him down for sure. This fight as a whole is minus 185 not to go to decision. So my money's on the finisher. If Vegas is expecting a finish, I think that's going to come from the guy who we know has more of a track record of finishing, and that's David Dvorak. I have a ton of interest in him on DraftKings as he's priced at only 8K. He should score really well in a victory. And I'm not completely ignoring Bruno Silva. He's only 8.2K. If he does win, it's likely to come by takedowns and grappling. So I'll have shares of both, but I definitely lean Dvorak as the more technical striker and the more powerful striker. But Bruno Silva is the local Brazilian, so you never know if Dvorak doesn't get a finish. If this one hits the judges, you want to talk about sketchy decisions. We've had a few of them lately, but Brazil is pretty bad. So any fight that you think is going to go the distance, we have one in particular later that I'll talk about, but that is going to be a factor more so than it is in on other UFC cards. But the pick is Dvorak. I'm expecting a finish. I hope he gets it. He's only 8K, and I like the bet as well with a little bit of plus money. All right, next fight up on the card, we have Marina Moroz versus Maia Bueno Silva. No relation to Bruno Silva, as far as I know. Silva is minus 145 favorite. The comeback on Moroz is plus 125. This fight to go to decision is minus 265. Inside distance lines for both fighters are not great. Silva comes into this one as the small favorite. She fought Jillian Robertson in her UFC debut back in 2018. She won that fight by submission in the first round to keep her undefeated record intact. She actually looked pretty damn good in that fight. I was impressed by her. She did hurt her knee in that fight, though, and that's why she's been laid off for quite some time here, almost 2 full years. She does have some decent power on the feet, and she has 3 submission victories. So I definitely favor her on the ground if the fight goes there. Her opponent, Marina Moroz, is coming off a decision win against Sabina Mazo. She's basically a boxer. She has a decent little jab and should be able to keep this fight competitive while it's on the feet. But I do think Silva will be landing the more powerful strikes and has the better ground game for sure. So fighting in her home country of Brazil, I think, you definitely have to factor that in, as I said. So I think the judges will lean Silva's way if the fight is even remotely close. So Silva by decision is the official pick. As for DraftKings, we'll pull up DraftKings prices real quick. I don't have a ton of interest. I mentioned, this one's supposed to go to decision. I think it does. If it does at 8,500, Silva's going to have to do a lot to pay off that price tag. And I know she scored well against Robertson, but like I said, she got the first round submission. I'm not necessarily expecting that here, but she kind of needs it to pay off that price. I could see her scoring like 65 to 70 points in a decision victory, and that's not going to do it at 8,500. So overall, it's just kind of a stay away for me on DraftKings, and we can move on. Next fight up on the card, Enrique Barzola versus Ronnie Yaya. Barzola, the minus 185 favorite. The comeback on Ronnie Yaya is plus 160. If you know anything about Barzola, he is a chain wrestler. He lands a lot of takedowns in most of his UFC fights. And sorry, I'm really having Twitch issues right now. If you're able to view this, just type in the chat so I know it's working, because my playback on my phone is not working very well, so it's really bothering me. I just want to make sure this is live. So Ronnie Yaya plus 160 favorite, Barzola minus 185. This fight as a whole to go to decision is minus 170, and this one is a classic wrestler versus grappler matchup where basically Barzola, obviously the wrestler, Yaya, great crafty veteran. He's dangerous with those submissions. So it's interesting, is Barzola going to shoot for those takedowns if he's afraid of Yaya's ground game? We'll see. He didn't really look to shoot much against Kevin Aguilar, even though Aguilar isn't some great grappler, but he just randomly wasn't looking to take him down. Barzola's coming off the decision loss to Movsar Evloev. which I thought, was at least pretty competitive. Yaya coming off the decision loss to Ricky Simon. All 8 of Barzola's UFC fights have gone the distance, and this fight as a whole is minus 185. Actually, so it's minus 170 now. It was minus 185 to go to decision. And I think Barzola will have a striking advantage as well. I mentioned the wrestling, but Yaya basically has nothing on his feet. So I think Barzola is the better boxer. He's a better striker, and he has the wrestling advantage. So he just has more paths to victory. Basically, all he has to do is just to avoid a submission by Yaya. And if he does, then I think he cruises to victory. And like I said, he usually in most of his fights, he lands a lot of takedowns. So in the upper mid tier range, I think he's 8,700 on DraftKings. I do have a little bit of interest just because if he does chain wrestle and land those takedowns, even in a decision, he can score pretty well. The pick is Barzola by decision. As for Yaya on the other side, he's a live dog. He's fighting in his hometown of Brazil. And if he wins, it is pretty much definitely coming by submission. So I don't think you can ignore him as well. I think this is a decent fight to target on DraftKings overall. Let me check Yaya's price because I know Barzola's 8.7. What is he, 7.5 or something? Yeah, 7.5. And like I said, if he wins, it's probably coming by submission. That's generally how he always wins. Look at these last 3 fights, other than the Simon loss: 92 against Sanders, first round submission; 84 against Duane, and third round submission; and then first round submission against Briones, scored 103. So, like I said, if he wins, it's coming by submission, and he's going to score well. So he is a live dog in this fight, and definitely worth some tournament exposure on DraftKings. All right, next fight up on the card, we have Alexei Kunchenko versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Dos Santos, the hometown Brazilian, minus 130 favorite. The comeback on Kunchenko is plus 110. This fight, not to go to decision, is only plus 135. That was a little surprising to me. I think, it kind of should have been a slight favorite not to go to decision, but that's just my opinion. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But basically, Dos Santos, mentioned the hometown guy. He's the rightful favorite, I think, although Kunchenko is coming off the unanimous decision loss to Gilbert Burns, but that was his first professional loss. Prior to that, he was on a 20-fight win streak, which is pretty impressive, even if, you were fighting lower level Russians, but a 20-fight win streak is still a 20-fight win streak. So that is pretty impressive, but he's a Muay Thai fighter. He has some power in his hands. 13 of those 20 professional wins have come by knockout. My issue with him is that he is too patient on the feet. He's generally just looking for that one big punch. He doesn't land in volume, and that's a problem because if he doesn't get that big punch, then he's generally losing rounds and scoring low because of the lack of volume. So that's a problem, especially when we talk about DraftKings. Dos Santos coming off the knockout loss to Li Jinglang. His last time out, prior to that, he was on a 7-fight win streak, and his last 4 fights have ended before the final bell. He also has knockout power in his hands. 14 of his 21 professional wins have come by knockout. I favor him on the feet for sure. I think he's the more technical striker, the more active striker, which is something I value quite a bit because generally, if you're the more active of the two, you're going to win rounds if nobody gets knocked out. And then also, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if he decides to take this fight to the ground, then I think he has a pretty significant advantage there as well. So he just has more paths to victory, and I just think he's the more talented fighter overall. Both of these guys are priced in the mid-range, so I do have interest to Dos Santos, pretty heavy interest, but Kunchenko, even though he's in the mid-range, I'm still going to limit my exposure just because I mentioned the low volume. He just doesn't score well. And, Dos Santos, at least if he wins, he's pretty active. He's only 8.4K. And, like, in his wins, like, they're usually finishes. Prior to the knockout loss, he subbed Curtis Millender. He knocked out his previous 2 opponents. Went to decision against Max Griffin and Lyman Good, but he scored 75 and 77 in those decisions. So he should be all right at 8,400. Kunchenko, on the other hand, Very low volume, 47 significant strikes, had 72 in that one, but that was kind of an outlier, and then 44 in the other one. So even in his two UFC victories, he scored 66 and 57. So at 7.8K, even though he's affordable, that's not going to do it. So I don't have a ton of interest in Konchenko. I'll take the hometown guy in Zaleski Dos Santos, and we can move on. All right, next fight up on the card, we have Amanda Ribas versus Ronda Marcos. Amanda Ribas, my girl. For anyone that doesn't know why I call her my girl is A, because she's really good looking, but B, because she came through for me in a big way in her UFC debut. Nobody was on her. Everybody was on Emily Whitmire, betting Emily Whitmire because Whitmire came through as an underdog in her previous fight. And you just didn't, there wasn't a lot of tape on Amanda Ribas. You didn't know much about her. But I was able to uncover some things about her, and I had a very, very confident lean in that fight that she was going to beat Emily Whitmire and that it would come by submission. And look what happened. It actually did. That was one of my best predictions, I'll say, and since I've been breaking down UFC fights, just because she was such a massive, not a massive underdog. She was a pretty decent sized underdog, but the submission to win by submission was plus 725, which is absurd because Ribas is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Whitmire was a white belt at the time. And so, I mean, I knew if it went to the ground, she would just absolutely destroy Whitmire. And that's exactly what happened. She was also a black belt in judo, so she used that judo throw, took her to the mat and subbed her in the second round, rear naked choke. So that's why I love Amanda Ribas. She always comes through for me. Most recently had that unanimous decision victory against Mackenzie Dern, and she just looks good. Like it's not just the grappling. Ribas is a decent boxer as well. She's quick. She has a nice jab, nice little 1-2 combo, and she is always getting better. And she has a decent amount of pop in her hands too. So um, she comes into this one as a minus 340 favorite. The comeback on Marcos is plus 280. I mentioned, she's coming off the back-to-back wins. Marcos is coming off a split decision victory against Ashley Yoder, her last fight. And prior to that, dropped a unanimous decision victory or unanimous decision loss against Claudia Gadelha. But Marcos is tough. Like, there's really no other way to put it. She is just a tough fighter. She will make the fight dirty. She's better than her record suggests. And I would say she's solid all around, but she's not particularly great in any one area. She's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. She has a decent little clinch game, decent wrestling, decent grappling. She's just all around decent, but that's only going to take you so far. And when we're talking about the new up and comers in this division and people who I think have the capability to fight for a title shot, like I do Amanda Ribas in the near future. If she tries that type of stuff against Ribas, it's not going to be work for her. It's gonna be trouble. Ribas is the black belt in judo, like I said, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so she's gonna have the advantage on the mat. Like that's all there is to it. And I mentioned the boxing of Ribas. I think that's where she has an even bigger advantage is this with the speed and power and just her technical boxing at range is much, much better than Ronda Marcos. And so while Marcos is tough, I think this fight primarily does play out on the feet. And I just see Ribas boxing her up for 15 minutes, very similar to how that Mackenzie Dern fight played out. So the problem with that is it doesn't score super well on DraftKings. I could see her scoring 70 or so points in a decision victory, but she is the second most expensive fighter on the card. I think she's 9.3K. So for that reason, unfortunately, I won't be having many shares of my girl Amanda Ribas, but I am pretty confident in the pick. Ribas by decision is the official pick. Next fight up on the card is going to be Brandon Moreno versus Justin Formiga. And Justin Formiga coming in as a small favorite in this one. Another local Brazilian, he's a minus 155 favorite. The comeback on Moreno is plus 135. And basically, Moreno is a dog that I always like to play just because, he obviously he has a lot of energy, but he's a decent fighter as well. he's one of the dogs that you like to bet on because you know he's probably not gonna ever gonna give up. Like he could be down 2 rounds and he'll still be like fishing for a submission or trying to do something crazy. So I always have a little bit of interest in him, but it's gonna be tough to back him in this matchup. Just because not only is Formiga the local guy, but he's also probably just the better fighter. He's coming off a knockout loss to Joseph Benavidez. Brandon Moreno coming off the decision victory against Kai Kara France. This fight as a whole is currently minus 265 to go to decision. And that's why I just really don't expect this fight to score well on DraftKings. Maybe we see some grappling exchanges and scrambles, but overall, I don't know. I don't really see it scoring too well. Moreno does look to wrestle. He has the grappling upside. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but Formiga's a black belt. So similar to when Formiga fought Figueredo, I can kind of see them both neutralizing each other on the mat. And on the feet, neither of these guys are super aggressive. So I think it could be a low volume, competitive scoring decision, which makes me have not very much interest in terms of DraftKings. I just think there's better plays in the mid range with higher upside that are going to be more active on the feet, that have a better chance of finishing. So, like I said, Moreno's looked pretty good recently, but Formiga is definitely a step up in competition. And if this fight hits the judges' scorecards, then I'm going to go with the Brazilian and Formiga. So Formiga by decision is the official pick. And like I said, not a ton of interest for me on DraftKings. Next fight up, another local Brazilian favorite, Francisco Ronaldo, minus 160 favorite. The comeback on John Makdessi is plus 140. This fight to go to decision is minus 170, and neither fighter has a very strong inside distance line. Makdessi is plus 590. Ronaldo is plus 225, which isn't bad. It's gotten better. It's trending the right way, but he's 8.9K on DraftKings, so you're going to have to do better than plus 220 inside the distance, buddy. So yeah, this is the one I hinted at earlier about factoring in the judges here in Brazil because Ronaldo had a very sketchy unanimous victory against Bobby Green, and that was the last Brazil card in November of last year. But I thought Bobby Green clearly won 2 rounds, maybe even won all 3 rounds, and they went completely the other way. Like it was just no questions asked. Ronaldo beat him, and you could even look like Ronaldo landed like 40 significant strikes in that fight or something like that and one takedown over the course of 15 minutes and won a unanimous decision victory where he got outstruck and just beat and they gave him the decision anyway. And don't be surprised if that happens again because Ronaldo is a huge fan favorite, especially in his home country of Brazil. So yeah, so he scored 51, scored only landed 31 significant strikes in that fight and won a unanimous decision victory. I didn't think that was possible, but apparently in Brazil, anything is possible. But that's the concern here against John Makdessi because I actually think Makdessi is a better striker, a better boxer. Makdessi is a black belt in karate. He's a good boxer. He's a good striker at range. I think he's a little bit better just due to volume and just better at range than Ronaldo is. And I think this one could be back and forth. You know, both guys are going to want to strike. I think Ronaldo is a black belt in kickboxing as well. So I don't have a super strong lean because, like I said, I actually do think Makdessi is better and should throw more volume. But the fight is in Brazil. And we saw what happened against Bobby Green when Bobby Green outstruck him. He still didn't get the decision victory. So that's my pause here on picking Makdessi as an underdog. Although I do think he's live, I just don't trust these judges. And at 7.3K, I do have at least some interest in him, even with the sketchy judging, just because he's so cheap. And if he wins, I think he'll score 70 plus in a decision. So I do think he's live. I'll probably mix him in, but I'm not going to be super heavy on him just because I don't trust the judges. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Ronaldo win another sketchy decision. So I just don't have any interest in Ronaldo. He's generally a low scoring play on DraftKings. 8.9K. Get out of here. I don't want to pay that. He's going to be really low owned because I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to want to pay that. But yeah, no interest from me on Ronaldo. All right, next fight up, we have Johnny Walker versus Nikita Krylov. This fight is going to be fireworks. Johnny Walker, the minus 135 favorite. The comeback on Krylov is plus 115. This fight as a whole is minus 550. Not to go to decision, open at minus 300. And as you can see, people are clearly expecting a finish here. And why wouldn't they? Every single one of Johnny Walker's 4 UFC fights have ended in the first round. And obviously, he won in the first 3 by knockout, and then he got knocked out by Corey Anderson in a very humbling knockout by Corey Anderson. And then on the flip side, Krylov, it's not just Johnny Walker that's a finisher, because Krylov has finished all 26 of his professional fights before the final bell. And he's not just a knockout guy. He has 15 submission victories. So he has 11 knockouts, 15 submissions. He definitely has the grappling advantage if the fight goes there. Although I don't think it will, because I don't think he could get Johnny Walker down. And I don't think the fight's going to play out long enough for him to get Johnny Walker down. So while the fight plays out on the feet, I do favor Johnny Walker just because of the power and the quickness that he has, although it's pretty close. I obviously have interest in both sides here. Anytime you have 2 finishers that are probably going to stand there until somebody gets knocked out, I always have interest in both sides. But this one in particular, the winner is basically a lock for the optimal lineup. There's 2 fights on this card that I think the winner is a lock for the optimal. This is one of them, and the other is the main event. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. But the pick is Johnny Walker by knockout. He has a strong inside distance line, one of the best on the slate at minus 105. And as we saw the last time out, he's obviously not invincible. Corey Anderson stunned him first, and he was kind of like, oh, like getting cocky, and then just straight up knocked him out. So, and now he's facing Krylov, who has legitimate power. And Krylov also has multiple paths to victory. So I highly recommend targeting this fight. I'm going to have at least one of these guys in every single lineup that I make this week. I suggest you do the same. Krylov 7.6K, Johnny Walker, I think 8.7 or 8.6. I think he's only 8.6 actually. Where's Johnny Walker? Yeah, I think it's 8.6 and 7.6. Yep. So, I mean, if he wins, it's coming by knockout, probably in the first round, probably going to score 100. And if Krylov wins, I don't know when it's coming, but probably in the first or second round, and he's probably going to score close to 100. And he's much cheaper than Johnny Walker. So I would definitely recommend getting sides to both, with a slight lean towards Johnny Walker is the way that I'm going to play that one. Next fight up on the card, Renato Moicano versus Damir Hadzovic. Moicano, the minus 340 favorite. The comeback on Hadzovic is plus 280. And this one is interesting. Moicano had a good run at 145, but after being knocked out by Jose Aldo and the Korean Zombie back-to-back, he's now moving up to 155 to face Damir Hadzovic. And from a technical standpoint, Moicano should really have all the advantages in this fight. He's a decent striker. He's got those strong leg kicks. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Hadzovic is really just another low-volume striker that's just looking for that one big punch. And that's where this gets interesting because for me, Moicano is coming off those back-to-back knockout losses. And I know some people are probably going to say, well, that's because the weight cut was so hard for him. And now he's moving up to 155. So now it's magically going to cure his chin. But I'm not super convinced by that. And I'm not saying it's a lock that he gets dropped or that he has no chin either. But when you look at the odds, that's where I have interest in. Hadzovic to win by knockout is plus 675. And that's where I said this gets interesting. That's where I think it gets interesting is that you have a guy that maybe doesn't have chin issues, but maybe he does. And at plus 675, I'm willing to find out. And that actually opened at plus 780. So it looks like people did hit that actually today and dropped it almost 120 points. So 105 points. So yeah, I'm going to take a poke at that bet. Although the pick is Moicano by decision, I think probably like, I don't know, 6 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 times maybe he wins by decision, and then the rest of the time he maybe gets knocked out. So I'm willing at plus 675 to take a little stab at that. Although I do think Moicano by decision is the official pick, and Moicano is the most expensive fighter on DraftKings at 9.4K. For that reason, I think he'll probably score like 70 in a decision win. So he's basically a fade for me on DraftKings. All right, the co-main event, Demian Maia versus Gilbert Burns, two black belts squaring up against each other. Gilbert Burns, the minus 175 favorite. The comeback on Demian Maia is plus 155. This fight to go to decision is minus 205. And basically, I can see this fight playing out in two different ways. And the first is that they're both not worried, but they're both aware of each other's grappling credentials, that they're not going to go there. And this basically plays out as a striking battle at range. And if that's the case, then I think Burns wins a low scoring decision. And then the other outcome, which I think is the more likely outcome, is that Gilbert Burns beats him up on the feet and he's confident enough in his own grappling to take the fight to the ground. He's not afraid to roll around with black belts. He's one of the best grapplers in the UFC. So I think we could see a lot of grappling exchanges, a lot of advances and reversals, which could score well for DraftKings. But I mentioned, Vegas is expecting this to go to decision, and I would be surprised if either fighter got a submission. So I think it goes to decision as well. The only way that I could see Demian Maia winning a decision is if he just continuously gets into favorable positions on the mat, or just rides Gilbert Burns, gets the back and rides him like a backpack, and probably multiple times. That's really the only way I could see him winning this. He's not going to win a striking battle against Gilbert Burns. And the problem with that is I just think Burns is too good to let that happen. He's a black belt himself. I really think Burns just wins the decision here pretty comfortably. Although I am excited to see possibly these two world-class grapplers go at it. But Burns by decision is the official pick, and I love the prop plus 135 Burns by decision. I think there's a lot of value there. But here we have another 9K fighter that's likely to go to decision. So as I mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of these guys that we're not really expecting finish, and Gilbert Burns is another one. Although I think he could score a little bit better than the others if we do see a lot of those grappling exchanges. But overall, I'll probably be underweight to the field in that one. And then the main event is Kevin Lee versus Charles Oliveira. Kevin Lee minus 140 favorite. The comeback on Oliveira is plus 120. This one's going to be another fun one. And I mentioned this is the other fight that I think is a lock that the winner will be on the optimal lineup. So my strategy is I'm literally taking a fighter from the Johnny Walker fight and a fighter from the main event. I will have those pairings in every single lineup that I make, because I think it is an absolute lock that both of those winners land on the optimal lineup. And so this one's going to be fun. Obviously, we're expecting another finish. It's minus 375 not to go to decision, and it's trending in the right way, just like the Johnny Walker fight as well. Both fighters have a decent inside distance line. Lee is plus 110, and Charles Oliveira is plus 160, I think. Where's he at? Oliveira, or plus 180, yeah. So I actually think he has a little bit more value, because he's just as good, if not a better finisher than Kevin Lee, and he has a worse inside distance line, and he's fighting in his home country of Brazil. So I think it's really tough, because I think Kevin Lee is the better striker, even though it's really, really close. So Charles Oliveira, he's had his last 13 fights have ended before the final bell, and he's currently on a 6-fight win streak. But Kevin Lee is coming off that brutal knockout victory against Gregor Gillespie. I'm sure you've probably seen it already, but it's absolutely disgusting. What he did to one of my boys, Gregor Gillespie, just knocked him out cold with a head kick. He was stiff as a board before he even hit the canvas. So it was just a really brutal knockout. But that goes to show you what Kevin Lee is capable of. And one thing is very clear, is that Charles Oliveira, he's beaten some decent guys, but he's beaten a lot of not so decent guys as well. Kevin Lee has had a murderer's row of competition. This guy has fought basically everyone that you can think of, and he kind of has a chip on his shoulder. He talked on the Ariel Helwani show a couple months ago about how UFC doesn't do him any favors. You know, he's not one of their poster boys, so they don't give many of these favorable matchups. So he's always having to go to like that fighter's hometown and fight somebody, and situations like that. And that's exactly what he's doing again here, is going into Brazil to face a great finisher in Charles Oliveira. So, um, yeah, I mean, the problem here is that, you know, I think Kevin Lee is vulnerable to good grapplers. You know, he's not a terrible grappler himself, but RDA submitted him. Tony Ferguson submitted him. And Charles Oliveira is an excellent grappler. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Obviously, Lee has the wrestling advantage, but I don't know if he'll use it because of that grappling of Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira has some of the best chokes in the game. Like he's that good. So I don't know if Kevin Lee's going to shoot for those takedowns. So we'll have to see. Um, I think what's more likely is we see a striking battle here, and both fighters are obviously capable of getting the knockout win. They both have legitimate power. I give a slight lean to Lee on the feet, but it's very, very close. You know, it's just like by the slimmest of margins. I just think he's a little bit more technical, has a little bit better cardio, but I'll have pieces of both sides. Obviously, they're both in the mid range. I mentioned the winner's a lock for the optimal, and the pick is Oliveira by submission. But again, it's not a confident lean. I think both fighters are clearly capable of getting a finish. And I mentioned I do really like that inside distance line plus 180 prop on Oliveira because I think there's a decent amount of value. Because if he does win, it's coming by a finish. So if you're getting nearly 2-1 on a finish, then I like that quite a bit. So that wraps things up. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You'll catch a replay of this if you missed it live at fightnumbers.com. It's also going to be on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. So do me a favor and follow me on all of those platforms as well. You can hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at JonKellyDFS. Before we get out of here, some of my favorite bets on the card. Oliveira inside the distance at plus 180. I like Gilbert Burns by decision at plus 135. I am going to take a poke at Damir Hadzovic by knockout at plus 675. And then I feel really good about Amanda Ribas by decision at minus 130 and Veronica Macedo money line at minus 170. And that wraps things up, guys. Like I said, check out fightnumbers.com. Throughout the rest of the week, I'll be having a lot of updates on my website. And if anything changes from now until fight night, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at JonKellyDFS. I appreciate it, guys, and I will see you next time.